Africa Prime, brought to you by Jameson's Select Reserve.
Welcome back to this special edition of Africa Prime, where we're speaking to His Excellency President John Atta Mills of Ghana. Mr. President, here we are, 2.5 years into your 4 years in office, 1.5 years to go. Can you mark yourself out of 100? How far have you gone? How well have you done in terms of implementing your program?
You know, I taught for 25 years, and that's one thing that I learned during that period. Never mark your own script. I want others to do it for me. So I will not give a definite mark, but I will say that the people of Ghana can testify that we are doing a reasonably good job. And we are confident that at the end of the 4 years, they will return us into office to complete our program.
Yeah. If we look back at the 2.5 years that you have had to implement your ideas, what would you say have been the highlights of that period?
The most important, I would say, would be the infrastructural development that we are undertaking in Ghana in terms of power generation, in terms of communication, in terms of roads, laying the foundation for a rapid economic development. I think these have been the highlights, I would say.
Yeah. How much remains to be done?
A lot more remains to be done.
You've got 1.5 years.
Well, 1.5 years, that is why we are seeking another term, and we'll continue seeking another term, because there's no society in the world which says, now we have got everything that we want. But I believe that in the 2.5 years that we have spent in office, we've done quite a lot, and Ghanaians can see for themselves. In the 1.5 years, we'll soldier on, we'll continue with what we have started, and I believe that at the end of the 4 years, they will see some substantial improvement from what it was when we took over.
Yeah. So 1.5 years to go, but let's roll back over the years. How did it all begin? Were you always cut out to be a politician?
Well, cut out to be a politician, but let me just say that I taught in the university for 25 years. For 8.5 years, I was the Commissioner of Internal Revenue, and then I became the Vice President, and then now the President. So I would say that I've had the necessary preparation and for this job.
If you were to look back over the period that you have been a politician versus the period when you were imparting knowledge and teaching, what should you say has been the most satisfying and why?
I think that I can't single out any particular one, but I would say that academia was useful, was very profitable, rewarded, and the same goes for politics. Politics, you have your ups and downs. There are times when you are extremely happy. There are times when you are down. But that is the nature of politics. But when you have provided a village with potable water, or where the road leading to a particular destination has been done, and you can see the joy, the happiness on the faces of the people, it gives you some inner satisfaction. Yeah. I wish that I would have more and more of such occasions.
Yeah. How difficult is it to be an African leader?
I don't think there is any more difficult than it is, anywhere else. Yeah. Our problem as African leaders perhaps is our inability sometimes to communicate with our people. Sure. And the difference also is that if you look at the level of our development, our needs are basic. Whilst in some developed jurisdictions, elections will be about whether there should be cushions in a local government building or that. I mean, they are thinking about this or that. In our case, these are the necessities of life. These are the bread and butter issues. And therefore, expectations are justifiably high. And therefore, if you are unable to communicate, if you are unable to satisfy people, then you do experience some challenges and problems. But that is to be expected.
Yeah. Mr. President, I'll say One of the difficulties that I have noticed, and I've been a student of African politics for quite a long time, is the inability to handle dissent and opposing voices. Why is that such a problem in Africa, do you think?
I think that, you know, let's also remember that it was only recently that Africans, they decided to adopt democracy.
Sure.
And for a long time, we had one-party states. You see, even our own cultural practices. I mean, you have a king who rules for life, and you must be careful what you say to the king and all that. So it's been translated into politics. So when you had one-party states, I mean, criticism, you know, was not most welcome. Yeah. And now we have grown. We've come into democratic politics. And it takes time for us to accept criticism. But let's face it, however democratic you are, if the criticism is not constructive, I mean, somebody criticizes you without any facts or any grounds, I don't think that even the most democratic of leaders, you know, would applaud, you know, this kind of behavior. But it takes time.
Yeah. Ghana, of course, is set an example. I mean, you assume the presidency from a civilian ruler, which is a rare occurrence across the African continent. So it's a very good example. But how do we engender that so that going forward, that becomes the norm rather than the exception?
I think it is important for us as African leaders to know that when you go into a contest, when you choose democracy, what it really means is that the people have the right to choose their leaders. And how do they exercise this right? It's through elections. And elections are contests. And when you go into a contest, you must know that you either win or lose. There are no draws. And therefore, once you say that I'm prepared to go into the contest, then you are telling the whole world, or you should be telling the whole world, that, well, I know I may lose or win. If I lose, I should accept the results. Of course, provided that the elections are free, fair, and transparent. But when they are free, fair, and transparent, we should accept the result. Now, there's a second reason. Sometimes there is a tendency for some of us to overstay our welcome. When Lord Acton said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, he knew what he was talking about.
I really hope that this message would be heard by every African leader across the African continent.
There has been the tendency on the part of some of us, hopefully, the occasions are becoming fewer and fewer, for us to think that the power really belongs to us, and that we are indispensable, and that we should stay in office for as long as we want, forgetting that when you call yourself a leader but you have nobody to lead, then you are a loner. I think that when this sinks in, we should be able to see some real progress. But I think that recent developments are also a pointer to the fact that at some stage, the people may tell you that, well, you've finished playing your part, leave the stage, and let somebody else come on.
Before you leave, I must ask you what you hope to leave two peoples. One, the Ghanaian people. Secondly, African people.
Well, I hope that by the time I leave office, I would have helped to raise the living standards of our people. I would have helped to consolidate democracy, rule of law, justice, etc. And above all, I would have left behind me a peaceful and stable Ghana with the right kind of atmosphere for attracting investment.
And for Africa?
For Africa, my contribution to Africa would be to lead by example, hoping that what I do in Ghana will rub off some of my colleagues, and that gradually Ghana's influence on the way things happen on the African continent will be more strongly felt.
Absolutely, and that passing on the baton is not a sign of defeat. Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
His Excellency President John Atta Mills, the President of the Republic of Ghana, our guest tonight on Africa Prime. Thank you for watching.